And we're back. All right. So, welcome everyone to our fourth edition of Commercial Obsession. Super excited about today. We have Yana Kyrylyuk. Did I say it right?
Yeah, yeah,
Kyrylyuk.
that's right.
So I actually got to meet Yana, many months ago. Lori Keel had her commercial collab call. I know she'd been working with you, and Yana has been a student putting together her thesis on commercial strategy in the hospitality industry, which is I think it's going to be a very interesting take for us in the commercial obsession call here, where we're going to kind of take an academic from the outside look in and seeing what some of that research says, what Yano's. I mean, I don't know if 20 minutes is going to be enough. I'm going to pick your brain for a very long time, but just a little bit of housekeeping. We will speak for probably about 20 minutes, just chatting back and forth. I do want to encourage you, drop some questions, comments, everything over in the little message board area. And then for the last 10 minutes or so, we'll go through those questions as well. So Yana, I really want to kind of start off with you and a little bit of the background, a little bit of why this was of interest to you. How did you get involved and introduced into commercial strategy for hospitality?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. I spent 4 months researching this topic, so sharing it, I think that's a very great way, great platform to start. And when someone asks me to introduce myself, I would say I'm curious mind with passion for the hospitality industry. But if I put that aside, then I'm a graduate student. I graduate in 2 weeks from the university in the Netherlands in hotel management. But I'm Ukrainian myself. And the reason I'm here that I wrote my thesis about collaboration in commercial strategy teams in the hotel industry. And I got involved in HSMI about 3 years ago, HSMI Europe. And then I got the opportunity to apply for a scholarship. And then I wanted it Mike Diamond Student Career Success Grant. And that's how I got to know many people in the industry, great people in the industry like you. And that's how I could also write my thesis about the topic. And how the interest came up, it started 2 years ago in September 2022. It's when I did my internship in a group conference and event department in one of Hilton Hotels. And that's when I saw there was it was not miscommunication, not discrepancies, but there was something that sales were doing that marketing was not following up with, and then group conference in events department. And I always thought there was something going on. And then I would go to commercial manager, sales manager, like, this is not working, we are not doing that. And I would always say, it just doesn't work. And I would go to people and ask, but why are you not doing that? And they're like, oh, we were not informed. Okay, so we informed them. Then why are you still not doing that? Okay, I don't understand that, or that's not my responsibility, or I don't want to do that, or I have other priorities. And I also felt when people say, I just don't want to do it, or they just don't get along, and I also think there's always underlying reason behind the just. And since then, I was curious about what is that underlying reason, if that's short version of why I started researching it.
Absolutely. No, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is an ongoing pain point in our industry. And I think it speaks volumes that it was so apparent so quickly to you that this is something that needs a solution. It needs to be looked at. I found it interesting. You mentioned there's really no academic research done on commercial strategy to this point.
Yes, you can't imagine how enthusiastic I was about researching this topic. Then when time actually came to research it, so I go on Google Scholar, I go on all academic databases, and I put commercial strategy team, hotel industry. Not a single article pops up. Then I put the right commercial strategy teams, and some interest was mentioned somewhere, but in hotel industry, nothing. So when it comes to commercial strategy teams, I was mainly relying on industry articles, industry reports, and then the empirical findings, so the ones from the interviews. But academic research, nothing, absolutely nothing. When it comes to academic, that was not very helpful to start.
Well, I think that's huge, and that just speaks to it right then and there. And we've talked about before on this call and in other places that commercial strategy, a lot of the commercial strategy leaders out there are first generation. So that means where they are implementing commercial strategy for the first time. There isn't a blueprint that they're following. And we'll get to this, but that was something that I found incredibly intriguing, because I had this perception that we were all operating with the same idea as far as what commercial strategy is. And from your interviews, that's just not the case at all. That was incredibly eye-opening to me. And almost a first step is we need to just agree what this is. So that will, I'm sure we're going to get to that in just a few. But I wanted to kind of go through a few of the different parts of your thesis. And again, for anybody that's joining, I believe I'm allowed to do this. They can have your thesis, right? We can go ahead and we can send that out. I strongly encourage everyone to read through this. I actually found myself reading it slower towards the end because I didn't want to be done. It was so interesting. It really, really was. But let's start off with you address the different ways that teams can work together. Can you kind of unpack some of those? What do those look like? So I know we landed on one in particular, but can you kind of go through a couple of those different ways that teams work together?
Yeah, so one challenge was that there was no academic research on commercial strategy teams. And second one is to actually understand what is that those commercial strategy teams want. Because when reading industry articles, I saw the words such as cooperation, coordination, collaboration, integration, cohesion, and teamwork. And then I had to pick one of those words, one of those terms, because then I would need to go and research it. But I would read industry articles, industry reports, LinkedIn posts, listen to some podcasts, videos, and even the same people were using those words in different ways, and they were used interchangeably. So that was one of my challenges to set out the difference between these. And I put it as cooperation, coordination, collaboration, and integration. Those are different ways of working. And it's not to say that they are right or wrong. That's about mixing and matching the purpose, the task, with the ways of getting there. Cooperation is just simply information sharing. It's aligning your activities. It's on basic level, and it can be something very quick. It's like giving a road to someone when you are driving. The next one is coordination. It's coordinating activities. You can coordinate your resources. It's also when you appoint someone to coordinate all the activities. It's when cooperation is not sufficient enough. After coordination, it goes collaboration. It's for different cases. It's when there is a much more complex task. It's when you cannot solve it on your own and you cannot solve it within one expertise. You need to involve others. That's when it requires collaboration. And the next one is integration, which is, I still put it in the same graph, but it's a bit different because it requires structural change. And I have to say that definitions might differ, and different definitions differ depending on which literature you're reading. But I focus on organizational behavior, which discipline that studies human behavior in organizational settings. And those are the definitions I use. And their integration requires structural change. That's about aligning incentives. That's about aligning the job descriptions, everything that is structural. And cooperation, coordination, collaboration does not require that structural change. And once again, they are not right or wrong. They just serve different purposes. That's important to know because I'm not making a case to collaborate or not to collaborate, but to say that they have different purposes. And we had the conversation earlier that it's like going to a fine dining restaurant, right? You don't go to fine dining restaurant for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Usually you just eat at home. But when it is a special occasion, you go to fine dining restaurant. Same as collaboration. You don't need it every day. It's only for complex tasks that you need it. Make sense?
Absolutely. And yeah, no, and because you're bringing up, I think it's important to say that all of those different ways of working together are important, but that collaboration piece is really I think the one that's going to move us forward in this commercial space. And to your point, to decide which kind of method of working together, we have to start off with what the goal is and identifying some of those, like, what does it mean to, what are the benchmarks that say we need collaboration here, and just cooperation or coordination won't do that. What is, the big difference? And so I think that's one of the pieces that you really unlock very well. Did you want to talk a little bit on that piece?
Yeah, just simply collaboration. You need to collaborate when there is a problem to be solved or opportunity to be identified, when there is something new, that's something you've never done before. Because if something that's been there, you just need to do the same thing, you are just coordinating your activities. But if something complex, something new that you have not seen before, then you need to come together. You need to think in a different way. That's when you need to collaboration. But for other cases, you don't need it. And it might be a bit contradicting because I wrote my thesis about collaboration, but now I'm making a case against collaboration. But that's because collaboration is such a time and energy, not even consuming, but draining process. You need to step out of your comfort zone to collaborate. And it became a modern workplace expectation, and we all want to collaborate, but it requires a lot of resources. Why would you put your resources in there when it's not needed? I also give example of like you have two knives. One is for cutting cheese, another one for cutting meat. And it's not that one is bad, another one is good. They just serve different purposes. You need to have both of them, but you need to know which one to use when.
Yeah, I think I can't tell you the number of meetings that I've sat in and I'd look around the room and go, how much did this meeting cost? And did we really need everyone to be in here? I know there's the joke, like, at another meeting, that could have been an email. But even when we are having some of those meetings, there are times where it's just not necessary. And I think that's a really key point. We almost have pushed too far into that collaboration. So we want everyone to be involved in every decision. And it's let's be strategic about what parts of our commercial strategy are going to require all heads to be there, and what parts do we go ahead and disseminate. And guys, we've got to trust our teams to be able to do these things. And that actually brings up another point that I think is really important, that difference between groups and teams. You talked about that as well. And it's one of those things that it seemed kind of like, well, of course, yeah, there's a difference. But when we really identify what separates the two of them, then it helps look at our colleagues and I shouldn't be using the word, and our team differently, and how it is that we should be interacting. So do you want to talk a little bit about that groups versus team?
Yeah, so there a lot can be said, but if there's just one thing that clearly differentiates them, is that in a team, success of a team depends on working together. So if I'm not working with you, I will not get where I want. In a group, you can do that. And I give an analogy with football team and tennis club. In football team, the success of football team depends on working together. In a tennis club, that's individual competition. If you don't work with each other, that's fine. Because at the end, you are measured for your own metrics. And whether you win or not, it depends only on you. You can compete under the same club, under the same flag, but the success of it does not depend on working together. So you don't have any motivation to work with others, because working with others is dealing with people. And that's always difficult because we are all different. So if I can avoid it, I will do it. If my success and success of the team does not depend on it, then I will not do it. And that's the main difference, when success of the team depends on working together.
So the foundational elements you talked about, I really want to lean into this. So the foundational elements of collaboration in a commercial strategy team. Let's go. Can you list those? And I want to kind of dive into those one by one a little bit, because I think there's some really good takeaways in there that we should uncover.
Yeah. So there are three, the main ones. First one is emotionally safe environment. Second one is education. And the third one is alignment. And they go in the order, because emotional safe environment, it forms the foundation for the education. And what I include in emotionally safe environment is trust, respect, and openness. When I say trust, it means that I trust that my colleague, the information they share is the right one, that they share all information, that the decision they make is in the best interest of the team and not only their own interest. When it comes to respect, is that other members respect my way of working, they respect my discipline, and they respect my personality. And openness comes that I'm open to asking questions, I'm open to answering questions, I'm open to learning together and to growing. And it's when every meeting, every conversation, discussion, email, any exchange is an opportunity to learn, and not an opportunity to defend one's territory or attack one's territory. Because it can happen that when I ask you a question, if you don't feel emotionally safe, you start defending. While someone can be just curious and want to learn and want to understand better, you might perceive as someone is trying to attack you, so you start to blame someone else and defending. Then it's not a good combination. It's not what you want to get at the end. Yeah. And it's important to have that curious mindset and to see that every conversation, every exchange that you have with other members is opportunity to learn and not opportunity to defend and blame.
So, and I think this goes to speaking to leadership in such a huge way. And I'll say, as I was reading through everything, what came to mind over and over again is I really feel like the successful environment, or an environment that would breed a successful commercial strategy, cohesive, collaborative environment. It's not necessarily the commercial strategy leader who knows the most, who is the most well-versed and has the longest background. It's someone who fosters that emotionally safe environment, that is able to support that ongoing education, that is able to communicate. We talk about those 3 disciplines that in essence can very much speak. They may all be speaking English, but they don't understand what the other one is saying. And so while we look at that kind of ongoing education in our discipline, a lot of times we look at, what are the new trends and things like that. The incredible importance of being able to have leaders be continuously trained in leadership in that space. I think there's an argument to be made that that's even more important. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I do not specify leadership or not talk about it in my thesis, because I said that everyone can not to take that role, but take that attitude.
Yes.
And I also say in the recommendations part that people get training in leadership skills, but not in teamwork skills, which are very different, very, very different. People are promoted to high positions for their leadership, that they can be proactive, that they can lead others. But working in a team is completely different. So that then people that get promoted to a high position for their leadership skills and they are asked to work in a team, that's a bit conflicting. That's completely different skill set required. And I see much more companies and people talking about leadership training, leadership skills, leadership conferences, but not about teamwork. But those are completely different skill set required. It's when you need to step back, when you need to work with others, when you need to listen. And leadership that also requires, but that's from a different side, that's from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's underestimated a lot how different it is.
That's great. That's great. So if you do have a CCO or a commercial leader that umbrellas on that commercial team, the importance of being able to equip that team with that teamwork training, like that's huge. We want to, of course, encourage your digital marketing team to stay on top of all, because Google is changing constantly. You want to be able to help your sales team have the coolest tools and get to go to all of these things and training on sales and so on and so forth, revenue management. But if they're all just becoming the best at their own discipline, are we in essence just making thicker walls around their silo? So let's really pour into helping the whole team take that training together. I think that's a huge takeaway, to not forget that aspect.
Yeah, and when it comes to chief commercial officer, the one leading teams, if there is someone, it's not that much about technical skills. Yes, you do need to have expertise in sales, you need to have expertise in revenue and marketing. But I had a few interviews who were chief commercial officers, and I asked them what their challenges are. One was about technology, and another one is to make people work together. But that's not about sales expertise, not about revenue, not about marketing. That's different. That's about leading teams. That's about working in teams. That's about people. That's not about sales, revenue, and marketing. We should look at it from a different perspective. That's not a question of hospitality industry, of sales, revenue, marketing, but that's a question of people, how to deal with people. And I think that we need to shift the perspective, how we look at that topic, because I think the answer lies on a different side.
No, I agree completely. Speaking of the team, one of the things that I found very interesting, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers of the people who are listening right now, I was really surprised to hear how many people didn't necessarily include marketing as part of the commercial team when they were told, and they said, we're asked, like, describe what the commercial team looks like. You got all types of answers, everything from sales and revenue to sales, revenue, and distribution, which I had always kind of considered goes alongside of revenue. And then you have some that have sales, revenue, marketing, PR, brand. It's quite the gambit. So can you talk a little bit about that, and our poor marketing team, because I think that they're absolutely instrumental for both revenue and sales to be successful. Why do you think marketing hasn't been looked at, or in some of these cases, that's not fair for me to say they haven't been, in some of these cases, why were they not seen as part of that trifecta?
Yeah, that was interesting because there were no two companies. They gave the same description of commercial strategy team. So I just made it really, really the basics
Yeah.
included because there was no description that would be the same. And marketing was included, but always in different ways. Someone would put marketing on the same level as chief commercial officer. Someone would put it completely separately. Someone would put it below. Someone would separate marketing on external into internal. I think there was one of the divisions. It was different everywhere. And I made the comment to every interview that after a few that it is different for everyone, and said, yes, it's just different organization structure. We operate in different ways, but that's also because of different number of hotels, whether it's property management company or it's brand. So they had different requirements, what they wanted to accomplish at the end. So they allocated their resources differently. And also part of it was the COVID, that one few interviews said that they are going back to how it was before, but they are still in that process. I got different answers. There is no one answer that I can give you because I got different answers from everyone.
Isn't that so interesting? And you'd mentioned technology a little bit. Obviously, I have a few thoughts on technology supporting commercial teams and kind of the development there. But I wonder how much of that is almost a hindrance. How do we build a solution if we can't really understand the landscape of the use yet? So I think that's a really, really unique piece. What do you think? Does marketing belong inside is it the trifecta: sales, marketing, revenue management? Should that be the commercial strategy team? Is it missing someone? Are there too many? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's different everyone, and there would be always someone from revenue, sales, and marketing, but people would be joining from different levels and for different cases. So sometimes marketing would be involved in weekly meetings, sometimes sales in weekly meetings, sometimes monthly, sometimes for specific goals. So there was always involvement from every discipline, but just on different levels and for different cases. It was just not constant. It was not the same everywhere. And when it comes to technology, every single interviewee mentioned that technology is a huge hindrance for them. And for every single interview, I had to ask what's apart from technology, because that was not the focus of my thesis. And I had to ask it a few times, so they actually gave me the answer about my thesis, because it stood out so much. Every interview mentioned it, every single one. That was impressive.
I think that's, we're coming up on High Tech and HSMAI next week. A lot of technology partners there. And, I think that it's one of those things where on the technology side, we need to start listening to the hotels and what it is where they've already learned how to do. As they're implementing some of these commercial pieces, and it's on technology to actually go and look and see what are they having to manually do right now, because it's no longer just that technology isn't supporting. It's now, it seems that it's almost hindering. And that's a place where we need to really catch up over on our side. I have so many thoughts on that one. But we do, I just realized, okay, so we're down to like 5 minutes. So if you do have any questions for Yana, just please feel free to go ahead and toss those in. Otherwise, I have thousands more, so I can keep going. process losses. This is something that you brought up as well, and such an important thing in a commercial environment to assess and understand. You want to talk a little bit about process losses?
Yeah, so process losses simply is something that goes wrong during the process. In our case, it's during the process of collaboration. And you have the actual outcome. The formula of actual outcome equals potential outcome minus process losses. So something you wanted to get minus what happened during the process is what you got at the end. Mm-hmm. Those are process losses, and they differ per context. And I break it down collaboration into stages of collaboration, because if you say that we fail at collaboration, okay, how do you fix it? It's such a huge concept. So right. I break down collaboration into stages. It's information sharing, brainstorming, decision-making, coordination, evaluation. And then I look into every stage and I ask interviews what might go wrong during every stage of collaboration and what are those process losses. Because then you can pinpoint what and where it happens, and then you can prevent it or minimize it. And also, I don't talk about what I'm going to say. I do not talk about what I'm going to say in my thesis. There's also process gain. Where there's process loss, there is process gain. There is the other side. You can prevent or minimize process loss, but you also have an opportunity to get more out of it than what you could otherwise. And that's something that I think we don't look into that much, because we just say collaboration. It's like a huge topic, and it's something, it makes it very intangible. But when you break it down into stages and you start pinpointing things, then you can fix it. Otherwise, you keep it something they can no, it's just not working.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to really the organization of the collaboration in general. You mentioned some of the solutions, and again, we'll send the link out to Yana's thesis. If you want to cheat, it's all towards the end is where all the solutions are, but I highly recommend you read through the whole thing. But in that, you talk about that kind of, again, team identification of what the goal is and making sure that everyone's, and it seems like such a silly thing, but until you first identify what it is your goal is, everyone's kind of working for themselves. That's such an important, initial part. But to also that forecast of the process loss allows you to start mitigating those losses ahead of time. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, my opinion is that it's illusion that we know what we are working towards. If you go tomorrow to work and you ask members of commercial strategy team to write down, to complete the sentence, our team task is, how different answers would you get? And is it specific? And does everyone know what everyone's contribution is? Because you can write team task, all right, that's one. But what is everyone's contribution? Do I know my contribution? Do I know my part in it? And also, do I know colleagues' partners so I can hold them account? I can hold them accountable. They can hold me accountable. And I think that part is missing. But that's the very first part, because there's no need for collaboration if you don't even have a team task. That's just the very first step. If there's no task that requires a team, you don't need a team. If there is a task that can be done by 2 people, why would you put 3 people there? Team task is when there's a task that requires a team. There's no point having a team if there is no task that requires it. And that's where it's missing. We don't think about it. We just put them together and that's it. The question that I like a checklist for myself is that if one of the team members leave, would it be possible to still accomplish that task in the way you want to? If yes, it should be assigned accordingly. Then team members should not be there. I'm sure there are plenty of things to do. Just thinking and analyzing what needs to be done.
No one needs an extra meeting. No, that's great. That's really great. And I think that we can't really even identify the exact times that you don't meet everybody, like as an example, because commercial teams are all so different right now. I'm just trying to think of like, okay, when's a time that I wouldn't need one of those people? Well, first we'd have to really identify what that commercial team is. Now, when it comes to that process loss kind of those step-by-steps and kind of the forecasting there, you mentioned needing to go ahead and put them where in the process. And what was very interesting to me, and you pointed out, is when there is a process loss that's identified early on, it keeps affecting every single part, and it grows is what it ends up doing.
Yeah, and again, if you have a conflict, it's gonna affect the whole process. But if you have a positive team climate, that's also gonna affect the whole process. So that's when I also say there's process loss and process gain. And it's not only that if you have a conflict, that only affects information sharing stage, also decision making, also brainstorming, coordination, evaluation. So it also has contingent effect on others, and then it feeds back at the next case, next situation when you need to collaborate. So it might seem like a really, really small thing, but then it has impact on others, and it goes like a snowball effect.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Yana, I know that we're out of time, but last thoughts from you. What's next with this? I'm hoping that this doesn't just stay a white paper that we get to look at. Are you going to be developing more from this? Anything else that we can expect from you?
I think I'm way too curious to stop there. Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
I think this will be the starting point. That's definitely not the end. I completed my thesis and I'm graduating, but I'm sure it's the beginning of something different, because there's so much research that I did not include in the thesis because it was outside the scope of it. I'm planning something, but let's keep it for later.
Teasers. We love teasers. All right. Well, thank you everyone again for coming and joining us today. We will send out the recording to this as well as the link to Yana's thesis. I encourage you to go through, read it. It's really, really some great stuff. So Yana, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Noelani.